Thank you, Stuart, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to talk to you today about an early entry investment opportunity. I'm the Managing Director of Pura Vida Energy. We recently listed on the Australian Stock Exchange at 20 cents, and in the past couple of weeks our stock's traded up to into the 40-cent range. So we've got off to a strong start. We still believe there's significant upside certainly by reference to the current market price. Where I'd like to start today is to begin looking at our asset off the Atlantic coast of Morocco. So we're a conventional oil explorer. We have a big acreage position just off the coast of Essaouira, about 100 kilometres offshore. It's a total area of around 11,000 square kilometres, or nearly 3 million acres in the old measure. And we've taken a big equity position there. So we're at 75% equity in the block. We've taken operatorship, of course. And the remaining equity is held by the Moroccan national oil company called Onium, which is quite typical for the terms in country. What's particularly important to understand about our acreage is we already have modern, high-quality 3D seismic data over our prospects in the block. And that data is revealing some significant structures.